Hare Krishna. So we've completed the fifth chapter of the first canto, and I wanted to pick a new section. So we're going to read from the second chapter. I thought about actually a lot of sections throughout the Bhagavatam, including different cantos, but this second chapter is actually really, really important. It just kind of summarizes the whole philosophy. So we're going to read from Canto 1, Chapter 2. Chapter is called Divinity and Divine Service. We'll start on text 4. This is 1.2.4. And this verse is actually often recited as an invocation before reading the Bhagavatam. And we'll see why when we get to the translation. 1, 2, 4. Narayanam namaskritya narang chaiva narottamam deving saraswati vyasam to jayam udirayet. Translation. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srila Prabhupada's purport. All the Vedic literatures and the Puranas are meant for conquering the darkest region of material existence. The living being is in the state of forgetfulness of his relation with God due to his being overly attracted to material sense gratification from time immemorial. His struggle for existence in the material world is perpetual, and it is not possible for him to get out of it by making plans. If he at all wants to conquer this perpetual struggle for existence, he must reestablish his eternal relation with God. And one who wants to adopt such remedial measures must take shelter of literatures such as the Vedas and the Puranas. Foolish people say that the Puranas have no connection with the Vedas. However, the Puranas are supplementary explanations of the Vedas intended for different types of men. All men are not equal. There are men who are conducted by the mode of goodness, others who are under the mode of passion, and others who are under the mode of ignorance. The Puranas are so divided that any class of men can take advantage of them and gradually regain their lost position and get out of the hard struggle for existence. Srila Sudha Goswami shows the way of chanting the Puranas. This may be followed by persons who aspire to be preachers of the Vedic literatures and the Puranas. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana, and it is especially meant for them who desire to get out of the material entanglement permanently. Jai.
Jai.
Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Bhavebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Rama. Now it's going to be stuck in my head all day. That's the way I like it. Jai. So, we have an invocation. First, there's the principle of actually invoking. Invocation means to call in. Vocare, to speak or call, to call in. We invoke. We have invocations because it's a really auspicious way to begin. Is by getting ourselves out of the way. Specifically, like the ego, all the different stuff we carry about ourselves, all the all the baggage, and we have that, and that's okay. But whenever possible, we want to get it out of the way. And when we're starting our japa, when we're starting reading, when we're starting hearing, these are really good times to remember that actually I want to get all that stuff out of the way and really receive. And so we're asking the Lord to be present. Narayanam namaskritya. Narayana is the Lord. Naram chaiva narottamam. Nara, there's a bit of a complicated theology there that Narayana is an incarnation uh, that we honor because he's a reminder that the Lord appears with his devotees. So we're asking the Lord to be present. We're asking the devotees to be present. Deving Saraswati, the goddess of learning. We're asking that Saraswati Devi be present and bless us so that we can learn what we need to learn, that the mind can be tamed and be present, just like a child can be very distracted and restless. So Arjuna says, "Oh Krishna, this mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong." And also he says, um, "It's practically mad." One of the words he uses. So this is like a child. It's just like, playing with this thing and going over there and then going over there and then falling asleep and getting up and like crying. And it's actually more powerful than a child, but that's the closest analogy we can come up with. It's just all over the place. But also when it's just present, then it can take in so much. We want the mind to be impressed. We want to receive impressions. Samskaras means impressions. And we want to receive the samskaras, the impressions from the Shastra. So we're asking Mother Saraswati to help us learn to receive, and she'll be also the author, so that we can actually be in harmony with the intention. We find if you ever take a humanities course and you study literature or a play, or you look at like film studies or anything, a kind of media study, there's a way in which the modern understanding of those kinds of studies is that uh, at best the author's intention is only like of some significance. There's a whole death of the author idea, which is that any work is subject to interpretation, and therefore anybody can write anything about anything, and we can find meaning in there that the author themselves didn't consciously intend. And that's characteristic of our mode of passion culture. But we're not interested in that. We're not interested in creating some story based on Bhagavatam. We're interested in what Vyasadeva realized. We know what Vyasadeva realized because we just heard about it. That's what the 5th chapter was about. When he received the wisdom from his spiritual teacher, that reminded him, actually, I've lost my way. I've been trying to get people to get the best benefit, but I've neglected to connect them directly to Krishna. I want to be connected directly to Krishna again, as he was. He's a very Krishna conscious person. And I want to help other people to do the same. We want to be connected to his intention. The idea is one of reverence, that the author here is not just another human being. The speakers are not just, other human beings who may be more intelligent than us. And therefore we have like a passing interest in what they're talking about, where they're coming from. But also we're like taking the academic point of view, well, I have to create some kind of novel interpretation to really get the essence of things. The Shamipras method, TM, like trademark. No, we want to get the essential thing that they have. We want to be open to that. So we're praying to them. So each of these personalities is invoked for a reason. And Tato Jayam Udidayat, that the Bhagavatam itself is the very means of conquest. This Bhagavatam is actually glorified in the Bhagavatam because it's where Krishna reposes his own aspect of Dharma. That's where Dharma is accessible. Dharma is translated as like religion or nature, proper function. That's where human beings can actually understand what to do. The Bhagavatam in this age, in Kali Yuga, is especially empowered to transmit Krishna. And it's the means of conquest. That means that hearing the Bhagavatam itself is one of the most important things we can do. And just the act of trying to receive the Bhagavatam, even if your mind is restless, even if you can only understand so much, even if you don't remember everything that was spoken later. That act itself invokes so much mercy. It helps Krishna to really be present in the heart. That's going to come out again in this section. And the Puranas, of which the Bhagavatam is one, are divided, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that there are Puranas for those who are in the mode of ignorance, Puranas for those who are in the mode of goodness, Puranas for those who are in the mode of passion. And Prabhupada makes a statement that we need to really break down. All men are not equal. In a vacuum, that statement is like pretty wild. All men are not created equal. It's kind of like, what is that? That's from the all men are created equal. We take it as self-evident. I didn't study American history because I grew up in Canada, but I think that's how it goes. We take it as self-evident that all men are created equal under God. Isn't that how it goes?
One God. Oh yeah, under one God, indivisible and connected to all, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe I'm combining a prayer.
We might call it my
Yeah, that's like the Pledge of Allegiance.
call a
Yeah.
friend to Americans. So it's the Pledge of Allegiance. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, it's in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. So apparently Srila Prabhupada's contradicting that, but he's not. He's talking about on the material platform. On the material platform, any two people are not equal. It's not possible because material platform means measurable things, measurable material criteria, right? Like, think about it this way. If you have two people, you can never find two people of the same height. It's not possible. You just got to get a more accurate ruler, and you'll find that someone is like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a millimeter taller or shorter. It's just not possible. There's always differences. That's what material means. It's measurable. In fact, the same person's always changing. You're taller in the morning because you've been lying down. Your spine expands because it hasn't been compressed by gravity. When you're standing all day and your spine gets a little shorter. If you go to outer space, your spine is going to decompress because gravity's not acting on you in the same way. So it's just always changing. That's what material world means.
Wild.
There are no equalities. So people have their acquired modes of nature. Some people are more in the mode of goodness, some by passion, some by ignorance. What this practically means is that people are motivated by different things. So we see in this tradition and other traditions, some scriptures will do more like you should do this. This is the correct thing to do. This is dharmic and moral. And that's the motivation for the hearer. It's like, oh, I want to be moral. I'll do that. And then for someone else in the mode of passion, they have to hear like, if you do this, you'll get this benefit. You know, this will help you have happier, healthier life, better sense gratifications. Oh, good. That's what I'm here for. It's like the sugar coating on the pill. Take your Flintstones chewable vitamins. You still make those?
I think so.
And it's a bunch of sugar and coloring agents. And it's like, oh, I want the orange one. I like the flavor. You know? And the kid just takes their vitamins and it's like, you got to get their vitamins, but they're not going to take it if it tastes bitter. So Shastra offers some sweet incentive that just gets you in the door, just gets you to swallow the pill. And it's not that there isn't material benefit, it's that it's insignificant. It's insignificant. Just like there is a benefit to tasting sugar. It's like, oh, cool, I feel a sugary taste for like half a second. Great. That's about what material pleasure is worth. Half a second of sweet taste. Then later, if you take too much of it, you get a sugar hangover. So you can't even. It's not, there's diminishing returns. But an intelligent, pharmacist and doctor will package the thing so that there's actually a more potent active ingredient. So the Bhagavatam, yeah.
What would be the motivate if it's do this because this is moral is sattva, do this because you'll get a benefit is rajas, do this because of what would
Ignorance.
be ignorance, yeah.
Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that worship of the Lord in ignorance is worship out of fear.
So
not great. It's not this kind of thing you want to have long term, but it can be useful short term, and even the Puranas will use it. Hey, if you don't do it, if you don't actually engage in your spiritual life, this is what happens to you. You suffer. Even in this life you suffer. What to speak of like after this life, hellish, the animal birth or whatever, you can actually just suffer in this life, and the mind can suffer. And it's like, oh, yeah, I don't want to suffer, so I should do this. And the whole goal of Shastra is to help everybody, regardless of where they're at. So the goal is the same. The end goal is the same. But depending on one's modes of nature, one is positioned differently. One is motivated by different things. So often the person in ignorance has to come to passion, and then come to goodness, and then come to transcendence. So the Vedas are all scripture in every tradition is actually a wide scale project. But the Vedas particularly are quite fleshed out, very, very detailed, and very addressing persons in all the varieties of modes of nature. And it's important to honor that. um, Sometimes you read a scripture or hear about a scripture that like is aiming at somebody in a lower mode, and not to be. We heard that the fourth offense in the chanting of the holy names is to disrespect the Vedic literature. So if you hear like some scripture is wagging a finger or fear mongering or offering a reward, understand that it's there for a reason. It's aimed to those people who are only motivated by that, and that Vyasadeva is not. He's not to blame. The Shastra is not to blame for having these different aims, because people have different motivations. Otherwise, they'll just ignore it and consider it insignificant and not relevant to them. And that's not acceptable to devotees. They want everybody to get in. So that's there. And at the same time, the Bhagavatam is actually um, it's the transcendental. It's the spotless Purana. It's called the Amala Purana. There is no spot of the modes of nature. You'll find in some ways, if you look carefully in the Bhagavatam, you can derive a lesson of, well, I should practice bhakti because if I don't, it's not good, or I should practice bhakti because I'll get material benefit, or even that it's the dharmic thing to do. It's just moral and right, and I'll get, it's just what's expected of me. Maybe I'll become liberated. But the predominant message of Bhagavatam is to develop love of God. And as such, it's actually the entire goal of all the scripture. Because after you come to the mode of passion, you come to the mode of goodness. After you come to the mode of goodness, when you're interested in liberation and not being attached to this world, higher than that is to develop love for God, to develop a relationship with God, to have our spiritual emotional self engaged, supremely attractive person. And that description of those people who are in that position is given in Bhagavatam, like Prahlad, like Dhruva, like Narada, like all the residents of Vrindavan, and others, and how they got there, what their experience is like, and their own testimony and explanation and prayers is supremely attractive for the soul, because it gives us a glimpse of what we're actually capable of. So this verse is giving us a perspective on how we can take shelter before we hear Shastra and discuss it, and before we chant or any other spiritual activity, to let our lower self get out of the way and receive the blessings of the teachers, that we hear what they want us to know, what's in their hearts, and that we can receive and learn and remember, and that the Lord be always in the center with his devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So let's take any reflections on that.
Writing notes. I love that you picked this section of the Bhagavatam, and I've been, from Krishna's mercy, right, been given opportunities recently to support and serve in Wisdom of the Sages, and co-host with mainly Kastuba Raghunath sometimes in the podcast. And when we do that, Kastuba reads the Sanskrit and I read the English translation, and these are part of the opening prayers we do on Wisdom of the Sages. And so I've been
Study of Bhagavatam.
Because the study of Bhagavatam, exactly. So I've been reading this translation, and I've actually been thinking about it a little bit, and like the meaning around it and what I'm saying on the podcast, right? And I also have been thinking, and I've been speaking to it before kirtans recently and stuff, of like why we're chanting the opening prayers, right? And like bringing us in this mood of humility and receptivity.
Yeah.
And so to hear this again of how I love how you share that the principle of invoking is to call in. It's the process of getting out of the way. So that and calling on, asking God to be present, asking Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be present, asking Narada to be present, asking the devotees in the mood of Narayana, right? Um, and Sarasvati, the goddess of learning. So we're calling on not even just our, not, I don't want to say just, not even our disciplic succession when we're doing the whole opening prayers, right? But we're calling on all these supreme, like supreme personalities that come from Krishna. And the way that that can empower us
Yeah.
to really to be able to receive, even if receiving is difficult for some, right? And to really like, okay, this is not about this me understanding the shastra perfectly. This is not me singing the perfect note in kirtan, right? This is me offering and opening to be able to receive more and more. And it's just such a powerful reminder and key. Really key to get out of the way. And it's like we're saying a prayer to purify our egos before we even begin to study or chant or, sing. And it's I love how that's so ingrained in our culture, our bhakti culture and
Yeah.
practice.
I'm really grateful for it too. It's been something I've taken shelter of on a daily basis now for a lot of years. And I'm always grateful for it. And sometimes when you're already there, the words themselves are echoing what's already in your heart, and you actually kind of
Mm,
don't need to say them
mm,
because your heart is already there. And sometimes your heart isn't there, and the words remind you.
mm,
Um, and it is necessary. It is necessary because even in the material context, we're dependent. And if you have the blessings of your teachers, you do better
mhm,
because they give more of themselves because we're people.
mhm,
And if your mind is present, and there's a science to learning, if you follow that science, like if you show up to your classes or your learning opportunities, and you've already eaten, got enough sleep, you're not doing things that disturb the mind and distract it. Like if you're consuming different kinds of media, you'll notice when you sit down to chant your japa, the effects of it,
mhm,
because your mind starts like reflecting it back at you because you're little sponges. So even materially, just receiving our lessons from the world, it's important to be um, humble and to understand what helps us to receive. But spiritually, it's even more important because what we're trying to receive is so much bigger than our context.
mhm,
It's categorically different. It's not like I'm learning a new language. That's hard enough, right? But someone said to you, Sean Press, you're gonna learn Korean. It's like, I don't know anything about Korean, but it's still just material. It's just a material thing, right? Or you're gonna go study entomology, the study of insects, or fine art history, or it's like, yeah, activate this part of the brain, that part of the brain. It's all material. But to actually receive what Vyasadeva has in his heart, we need his blessings. We do. We need the blessings of devotees because you can't guess that. You can't figure it out, speculate it. Krishna reveals himself because he wants to reveal himself. He does it through his devotees, he does it through his name. He has to because in order for us to experience him, we can't come to him on our own. We're just too small.
right.
Luckily for us, he's really merciful. Otherwise, it would be permanent exclusion.
Right.
But we have so much to gain from this whole culture,
Mm,
and yeah, you can actually have this mood when you come before devotees. You can have this mood before prasadam. In fact, that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur composed several prayers about prasadam, because otherwise it's just like it's so easy to be like, oh, this is food,
mhm,
and just wolf it down like an animal. That's why they call it wolfing it, because that's what wolves do.
mm,
And you can do that, but it's actually a transcendental experience if you recognize it's prasadam.
right.
So he's got one prayer where he says, "My dear devotees, just the same benefit that many yogis get by many thousands of years of meditation, we shall have just now in a few minutes by taking and honoring the Lord's prasadam."
Mm,
He sings like that, and he's convinced about it. We
mm,
can be too. So
mm. Last night in TNT Lock, the theme that we spoke about was mercy. and Krishna's mercy, and how we can see that, where we can see that in life's challenges as well as the beauty. And this is Krishna's mercy coming down through us through the prayers too, right? And through our teachers. It's like we're nowhere without the mercy of our teachers.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
this is
thank you.
true. And I was going to say something else. It'll come to me.
Hmm.
So it'd be kind of a neophyte question, but when they say that they're the Vedas, so what is, I guess I'm trying to like figure out Vedas and Puranas.
What's the difference?
Like, isn't it all Vedic literature?
It is, and it isn't at the same time. There's a
Okay.
distinction. So there's two categories of scripture, Shruti and Smriti. Shruti means that which is directly, Shruti means literally sound.
Yeah.
It's eternal sound vibration, that which is spoken by the Lord. So the Upanishads and all the Vedas, Rig Veda, Samveda, Atharva Veda, Yajur Veda, which contain a variety of things. And of those, by the way, only around 12% of them are even available anymore. They're not all even existing. They've been lost. But all the Upanishads are part of the original four Vedas, are considered Shruti. Smriti means commentaries on.
I see.
And the Puranas are all Vyasadev's compilations on the Vedas. And for us, they're particularly important because the Vedas only make sense if you study them from the age of 5, going to Gurukula and studying under a guru and living a very organized life in Varnashrama. Your parents had the Garbhadhan Sanskar before you were even conceived, and you're very purified. Eventually, you can understand through the esoteric message of the Upanishads what the whole point is. The Puranas are more, they're more, instead of, they're descriptive instead of instructive. They're like descriptions of people, like devotees going through their thing. Vyasadeva and Narada Muni, instead of telling you what's true, you get to experience through the lives of people. And that's helpful for us in this age with our kinds of minds. And they're called Smriti because they're the remembrance and the realization of pure devotees. Bhagavad Gita, by the way, is because it's part of the Mahabharata, it's Smriti, but because it's spoken by Krishna, it's Shruti, so it's kind of both.
Interesting.
And Bhagavatam itself is also considered to be, it's a Purana, it's the Bhagavata Purana, but it's also considered to be Shruti because it's a very special category, so it's an eternal sound vibration. But as a Purana, it's considered in a way different than the four Vedas and their contents. But as Prabhupada points out, the Puranas are part of the Vedas. And as Jiva Goswami goes out of his way to point out in the first Sandarbha, the Tattva Sandarbha, he writes 6 Sandarbhas as like philosophical treatises. The first one deals with epistemology, how we know what we know, and it establishes, first of all, what the ways are by which we can attain knowledge. Through our senses, through our speculation in mind, through authority. Then through all forms of authority, he establishes logically how the Bhagavatam for us is actually the highest authority. And then having done that in the first Sandarbha, the shortest, the next 5, he draws from the Bhagavatam to prove all the different points, to establish all the different points Bhagavatam is giving us. It's the philosophical underpinning for our entire tradition. The extract I want to bring from that is that the Bhagavatam is the most important of all books. And if you want why, you can study the Sandarbhas. The first 2 have been translated by Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu and printed by the BBT. It's a little dry, but if you're into that, I can hook you up. But the Bhagavatam is the most important of all scriptures, including the Vedas. Jiva Goswami proves that. So some people, they take like an artificial view and they separate them artificially.
Thank you.
But that's the history. That's why.
Yeah, I've Googled it before, and it's like it talks about Puranas, Smriti, and like doesn't really give any. I'm just like, wait a second, I can't like wrap my head around. Like
It's a great question.
Thank you for explaining.
Can I share? When you first were reading through and you said in the purport Prabhupada said, not, or the author said, all men are not equal. It's like, wait, what?
I know, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And, from a US perspective, we've all heard, all men were created equal. But as I've been thinking about that, all men were created equal. But he
Right.
says, all men are not equal. So we were created, like, I'm thinking about the fact that we were created as spiritual sparks,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? But in
Yeah.
reality, because of
100%.
Maya, we've been covered with all the other muck, and we are motivated by different things because of our environmental experience. And that the reality is that we're not all equal, even if we were created equal, we're not equal now. Like, and we need to be reached in different ways, through the different methods that you were talking about. Some people need to, be motivated by fear, and other people need to be motivated by more pure, directions. But I don't know. I've just been really fascinated with that since you said it this morning. I've been like really running through my mind. What does that really mean? And I just think it's fascinating. And the other thing that I really liked, and I would keep this in mind, probably forevermore, is that material pleasure is half a second of a sweet taste. I like that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Your first point it is really deep. That's why your mind your intelligence is attracted to it, because it has a lot of implications.
Mm.
Because when the Pledge of Allegiance says that men are created equal, when people talk about equality, they're trying to grasp at a spiritual principle. That's why it's so attractive. That's why people fight and die for it. It's actually a spiritual principle. Equality really exists on the spiritual platform. And when you said we're created equal, but then we, because of our conditioning, manifest in different ways and therefore unequally, that's why it's referred to as going back to Godhead. It's that constitutionally, that's who we are. That's our nature. The other stuff is artificial. It's temporary. It's an imposition. It's actually, strictly speaking, unnecessary. It's not necessary. In our conditioned state, we think it's necessary, and we create so many isms around it. All the different political factions, all the different ideologies, all the different, even social justice, it's just based on isms. It's like, let's create equality because there's current inequality in these ways. And that may be true, and that may be worthy of doing temporarily. But it's, as long as it's based on the material platform, it's just relative. And it can just create an adjustment, right? It's like, let's do this, then let's do that. It's like, that's fine. But the solution isn't found on the level of material categories. So actual equality is experienced. I mean, it's a less heady thing than we may think, because in our hearts we try to deal with people equally. If you remember back to when you first heard about the idea that, like, you're not the only person who experiences the world, and you should therefore be nice to other people. Just the capacity to get beyond one's own limited consciousness, one's own limited tiny scope of the universe. We practically learned this in kindergarten, right? Empathy. Empathy is like a little transcendent experience, because you realize there's actually like infinite living entities out there having their experience, and every one of those experiences is as interesting and relevant as mine is to me, right? And so we're all basically the same, even though our experiences are different. We're all little experiencers. That's the conclusion. So it's actually not complicated. Kids understand this, and it's natural. And at the same time, because we have so much built up around the material that we have to either deconstruct or temporarily just set aside, there's always this reminder that, yeah, you're not your body, you're not your conditioning. All that is external, and this is what spirit means. This is what matter means, and the very strict definition of the difference, so that we don't get confused, because otherwise we're used to getting confused. We're used to getting confused. That's the whole Bhagavad Gita. Is Arjuna is like, oh, I'm gonna have to kill people and they're gonna be gone. Krishna begins by saying, what are you talking about? You're talking all these very fancy words, but you're speaking as if you don't have any knowledge. They're not gone. All these people existed before, and me, and you, and they're going to continue to exist. That's the first lesson. From there we'll go on. But generally in our society today, we don't even remember that first lesson, that we are not the body. It's like we're very much rooted in body consciousness, or perhaps in mind consciousness if we're a little more subtle. But yeah. Thank you. Real equality is in the spiritual platform. It's not in the material platform.
Mhm.
More reflections?
Yeah, I'll just say quick, thanks for going over this when I was thinking about it. I was like, not other than, but like probably number one is the Maha Mantra, but number two is in terms of verses I hear in a day, this is probably number two in uh, Sanskrit that we hear throughout the week. So it's like it was really cool and really great to hear some deeper meaning behind it and the importance behind it more than just the translation. And I think one of the things from the purport that I took away was right, the Bhagavatam is the means of conquest, but also he kind of talks about the perpetual struggle for existence and how it isn't solved by making plans. And I just kind of I appreciated that, especially with the holidays here. Sometimes it feels like all I'm doing is making plans and not actually doing anything. But it's ultimately about reestablishing connection with God. And I was just like, yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, and unless we're generally for everyone in this audience, we have a dharmic responsibility to continue to be attached to the world, at least externally. So we don't just like not show up for the holidays and not serve family and all that stuff. Plan making has to be there, but it's put in context. Otherwise what we see happens is if we don't have that context, it becomes all encompassing. And if you grew up in this country, then it's Christmas. And if you grow up in that country, it's some other thing. But there's always just plan making, and it takes over your entire life, actually.
Mhm.
Your whole life is thinking like, oh, I can't wait to graduate, then I'll be happy. Oh, I can't wait to get married, then I'll be happy. Can't wait to have a kid, get this job. Whatever it is, it's always plan making. And then next thing you know, you're dead. The life is over. And without the context, you've always just been living either in the past or future, not even in the mode of goodness in the present. So it's nice to remember that the fundamental problems we're dealing with can't be addressed by plan making, even though the plan making goes on. Even sannyasis, even completely renounced people have bank accounts, so they can deal at a minimum with whatever they have to in this world. They can receive the donations they have and live off of them. You still have to have a bank account. There's still some plan making. You have to get an invoice or go online to your online banking. It's like
Mhm.
we all have our begging bowl. Traditional sannyas meant you sit and you have a bowl and can I have some food? And that's it. But everyone's got a bowl. It's just a different size. The householder has a different size bowl. They have more to accommodate. But that's just to keep the machine going. It doesn't actually solve the problems. So we do both. We keep the machine going, keep the machine of the body, the machine of society going, and we keep this transcendental sound vibration going, no matter what.
Mm. Do you think you could close with sharing something, maybe a verse from the Bhagavad Gita or something to inspire or even support, like someone on the call who's dealing with an impending loss potentially, right? We were talking about we're not these bodies and yet we're attached to them.
Yeah.
And it's like next thing we know, boom, we're gone. And so could you leave us with something to inspire hope?
Well, Bhagavad Gita says a lot of things about that. Early on, Arjuna's lamentation, his fear, his suffering is based around that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's natural, it's totally relatable. And you know, when we're talking about like fear of death or looking at possibility of death, that's something that everybody has to go through. And even devotees will have their emotional experience around it, and that's okay and natural. And it's also very unique to everybody. But what I found is that devotees who take their hearing process really seriously, they have a good job of practice, and they hear Shastra, they're able to put the comings and goings of life in context, whether that means death or it means just like illness and recovery. That's also a process. Even if someone doesn't die, it's a process to get sick and get better, or to watch someone else get sick and maybe get better, maybe not get better, maybe someone get better. But the support that Bhagavad Gita offers and the Mahamantra is context. And it pacifies the mind. Because like when you hear Dehinosmin yatha dehe kalmaram yovanam jara, tata dehantara praptitiras tatra namohyati. That a wise person is never bewildered by the changes of life because they understand that a person is passing through. Just like we pass through birth to childhood, to youth, to adulthood, to old age. Similarly, just like clothes wear out and they're replaced, the body is replaced itself after it's worn out. And they're able to put this human life into context and all the different transitions and chapters within it. And that doesn't just solve all the emotional stuff. It doesn't make you like, oh, then I don't feel grief anymore. No, you'll feel whatever you need to feel. And at the same time, the edge is taken off of it and it becomes contextualized, means it starts to actually make sense. If we don't understand the bigger picture, then there can be a lot of like railing against, Dylan Thomas wrote, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light." Like, don't. He's speaking to his father who was dying. Don't just die. Fight against it, he was saying. And we can have this like deep anger and resentment and denial of death because we don't understand the purpose it serves. It's like we're in a temporary situation. It would actually be a curse to be living in a material body forever. So let's just get that right off the table. And the living entity continues and existed before. That's the context. So all the changes are in that context, whether the change is within one body or leaving another body or going into another body. And that is sobering. That actually creates sobriety. And sobriety actually helps with grieving. If you're not sober, you can't grieve properly because it's chaotic and meaningless, apparently, and consists of a constant struggle against uncontrollable emotion and questioning. And sobriety lets us to actually go through what we need to go through, including letting go or watching somebody suffer that we care for. We don't want to see them suffer, and yet that's there. So this transcendental sound vibration, whether it's philosophically contained like that verse, that's Bhagavad Gita 2:13, by the way. 2:14 is also really relevant to this, that whole section. Or the Mahamantra is actually induces sobriety and context for us as devotees, and that's really helpful. And that helps when you're going through something, and it helps if you're chanting. Like what I'm saying is the fact that we've chanted before and hadn't taken this in will help us when stuff happens. And also when stuff happens, you can directly take shelter again. So there's curative and preventative, and both are true of transcendental sound. Like it helps when you're sick and going through something, and it helps before you're sick, just to arm you for what's going to happen. So,
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We've heard from everybody, I think, except for Julia. Do you want to reflect anything, Julia?
Sure. So Kishori was sort of directing, a verse, kind of in my direction in regards to, my mother. And I really can't imagine being in this position without having any of this Vedic knowledge, truly. It's allowing for me to like sit in multiple positions and roles at the same time. it's allowing me to have my emotional material experience and really praying for her spiritually. And it's been really sobering to witness how it takes very little planning to prepare for your material death. And that has it it's like it takes so little to prepare for your material death. But my biggest concern has been, how can I be there for her right now to support like her spiritual passing,
Okay.
and even to witness her current state and to arrive at a place of praying for her death if it means she's not unconscious and trapped in a physical body. Um, it's just really been sobering and very impressive. Like you used that word earlier, very impressive. Um, like I'm impressed at the way in which I'm experiencing myself and my mother and this whole family dynamic. Um, and yeah, it's been, heart wrenching, but already really powerful. And, you know, to be sitting with her yesterday morning, having coffee, like a normal day, and
Yeah.
then hours later, stroke and completely physically shutting down. And it's really a grave reminder that we really never know how much time that we have. And the only thing I wish I could have prepared her more for is the spiritual transmigration. And, to witness that amidst all of this has been really powerful. And um, I think that just felt important to share. And as everyone navigates holidays and just any time of life, it's like it can all end in one moment. And it just becomes really clear um, that the spiritual process, it has to be number one, because the material ending is so easy.
Thank you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys. I it's taken putting myself in front of Shastra and in association. And like that's it. Even when I couldn't really I had a horrible japa practice last summer, but I said, if I feel like I cannot chant, I will listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam or Shastra every single day on repeat. Not even going in, what am I going to hear? What is the point? I'm just going to listen. And I truly believe that that changed everything. It's just really been miraculous.
It works. It works to the extent that we take it. Yeah, like you said, even if I don't understand it, just keeping that transcendental sound vibration going. It's a powerful testimony. That was my experience and continues to be my experience. That's the experience of really every devotee I know. So the fundamental thing is to keep the transcendental sound vibration going. And that's the main thing you can do for your mother, you know, is have the Maha Mantra playing. The soul can hear it, even in an unconscious state. Even materially, the ability to hear is the last sense that's taken away from you. They can't respond or they can't see or whatever. That sound vibration will, if she has to leave her body, it'll help her. If she's going to stay in the body for some time, it'll help her then. And that's service. Bhakti is holistic. It teaches us how to live, and it also teaches us how to die, and how to help others to transition. Because it's part of life. Even if we live in a society that's obsessed with ignoring that and creating distractions from it, it's a necessary part of life. And devotees become particularly and specially equipped to help others to leave their bodies, to make that journey. Yeah, I remember having the Maha Mantra playing for my mother when she was unconscious, and I actually don't have any words to express how grateful I am for her, because she was listening to it when she left her body, and I just hope that happens for me. I really do. So, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. All right. Looking forward to exploring the rest of this chapter. Everyone have a great day and keep the transcendental vibration going. Haribol.
Very bold.